Hey, what's up, everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be watching Carnosaur. So, Carnosaur is a 1993 Roger Corman produced kind of B movie about genetically engineered dinosaurs that run amok. And yes, I know in 1993 there was this other film with a similar premise that you may or may not have heard of. Now, with usually these recommendations, I always, give you reasons why I think you should check them out, why I think they're good, kind of just my own personal take on them, and kind of what I walk away from. Now, with this one, I'm going to preface something because for those of you who are familiar with Carnosaur, you're probably wondering why the hell I'm recommending it. Because when I say it's a B movie, it very much is a B movie. Now, that's necessarily a bad thing. But I do want to preface something with this film. While I do not consider this film a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, my recommendation comes from it not from the movie it ultimately ended up being, but what this film was trying to do and what I feel it was successful in doing. The story it was trying to tell, and how any limitations or rather shortcomings of this film are kind of due to studio interference or kind of limiting the film, particularly in the budget, and being what it ultimately was originally meant to be. So rather, I'm going to focus on the intent of this film rather than the final product, which there's still a lot of good in the final product, but unfortunately, there's a lot that kind of falls flat due to budgetary limitations. So, Carnosaur is actually based on a 1984 novel by the same name that was written by John Bronson under the name Harry Adam Knight. And it predated Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park by again a few years, and basically is very similar in terms of someone, a very wealthy individual trying to basically successfully cloning dinosaurs with the intent of having them repopulate the Earth after the inevitable World War III, when mankind would basically just destroy itself and basically just let dinosaurs run amok. And while normally I focus on the books when it comes to any kind of story, whether it's been adapted to film, the book and the movie bear little to no resemblance. The biggest resemblance they have, honestly, is the name. And the author penned an initial script or outline for the film before it was essentially just kind of taken away from him, and he basically got a credit for like initial concept or original story. But beyond that, he was not involved with the film, and as far as I know, wasn't too pleased with how it turned out, considering how they basically just kind of took it away from him. So I can understand there. But the reason why I'm focusing on the film rather than the novel is that the novel has since been out of print, so it took some digging on my part a few years ago to finally get the old used copy of it. And when I finally read it, while it definitely had some interesting points to it, ultimately I felt it was not as, narratively speaking, as interesting as the movie. And granted, that's just my personal opinion. If you guys have read the novel and like it better, more power to you. It wasn't a bad book by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt it was a bit more, I don't know, it was a bit more Bond villain-esque on a lot of the motivations, and I felt towards the end of the book, I'm not going to spoil anything, it felt as if the author kind of got tired of writing it and seemed to kind of conclude things in a very kind of abrupt and off-the-page manner. If for those of you who have read the book, you'll probably know where I'm coming from or what I mean by that. But beyond that, I'm not going to touch upon the book because, like I said, aside from a few similarities and pretty much the name, the movie is its own thing. And I kind of feel that Roger Corman produced the film, very much wanted it to be that. Again, the film was basically meant to capitalize on the hype of Jurassic Park that was coming out. But while Corman's motivations for the film might have been purely monetary, Roger Corman trying to exploit a larger film to get some money? The creative team behind the film went into it initially expecting to do a much more higher caliber film. In fact, when it was revealed that it was only going to have a $1 million budget, essentially, it took a lot of people by surprise because the initial script had more dinosaurs, more everything. So you'll see that a lot of the performances in the film are, for the moment, there's maybe one or two people that kind of slowly kind of ham it up for the camera ever so slightly. For the most part, everyone plays this movie straight. No one is kind of delivering a B-movie performance. Everyone is treating like this as a very serious film. We're going to take this film very seriously. And the way the dinosaurs are treated in this film, with the exception of, I feel, some unnecessary, gratuitous violence towards them, but that's just my own personal opinion on that, they're treated with this reverence of like fear and awe, and they are, in classic kind of creature feature fashion, they are at their most terrifying when they're not on the screen. Unfortunately, what kind of hinders this movie is when you do see the dinosaurs. Again, very limited budget, and it was made very clear when you see the dinosaurs, who essentially look like Muppets from hell. And doing a little bit more research into kind of the making of this movie, because as years have gone on, it's kind of more has come to the surface. And it's actually, this year marks the 25th anniversary of Carnosaur. You learn that a lot of the means in which they kind of do the puppets, the animatronics, were much more rudimentary because they essentially had a very short window in which they could have all these things prepared for camera. So a lot of the effects houses behind them couldn't really design them to look as good as they normally could by the standards of the day. Now, granted, after Jurassic Park came out, that changed everything. CGI was put into the public conscious, and even the animatronics in that film were of the highest caliber, being created by Stan Winston. And while Carnosaur probably wouldn't have looked as good as that, given more time and a larger budget, they could have looked more comparable to the status quo of the day in a pre-Jurassic Park cinematic landscape. But unfortunately, again, because the film was undercut, the budget was undercut. I've heard stories of Roger Corman going on set and literally just grabbing the script and ripping random pages out, just saying, just take these out to make it cheaper. You realize that there was very kind of two divided factions working on this film. One who was just wanted to make money off it, again, cash in on the hype for Jurassic Park. Because yes, this movie did get a theatrical release and was released 1 week before Jurassic Park, and it pretty much fell off the map after Jurassic Park. Surprise, surprise. And there was people who went into this film trying to make a legit movie, saying, okay, we're making a science fiction horror film with dinosaurs. We're going to play it straight. And because of that, that's really what saves this film. Diane Ladd's character, Dr. Jane Tiptree, probably gives one of the most haunting performances of any character I've seen in films. Not but I would dare I say she would almost even be up there with Hannibal Lecter territory. And I know it's a very bold statement, but I stand by it. And because her character, essentially, always billed as the mad scientist, the film is not mad, and that is the most frightening thing about it. She is essentially approaching the genocide of the human race almost as if like an annoyed mother. She is viewing humanity as essentially a petulant child who has just been throwing a temper tantrum, and she's just over it, and she's not dealing with it anymore, and she's essentially just punishing it. Not out of spite or out of vindication, because one of the interesting things about this character I find is that her motivation is not born out of some kind of anger. She's not angry. She wasn't at least they never go into it, but she wasn't abused. She's not a rape victim. She didn't have a troubled life, as they explained. She literally worked in biotech engineering, and as she said, as she worked in the destruction of the world, both in government and industry, and she realized that that's all humanity wants to do, is find new, innovative ways to destroy themselves and take the world with it. And she basically said, nope, the world is not ours to destroy. So she wants to give it back to the dinosaurs. Why? Because why not? If someone's going to be here, dinosaurs were cool, right? But they were on the Earth for hundreds of million years. They didn't have any of the problems we did. So she's like, you know what? Let's just pick it up from there. Why not? And it is that simplicity and just that almost like, what's the word I'm trying to describe it? Almost like this casual logic that she goes about, essentially bringing about the extinction of the human race. That makes her so terrifying because she is going to wipe out all of us just because she just looked at it and very just analytically said, no, it's not working out, scrap this, let's go back to this instead. It's almost like a mentality of, again, of like a casting call, like humanity, went to an audition, it kind of didn't work out. Nope, let's call back in the other guy. Let's see if they did a better job. And one of the characters who even confronts just saying that, but you want to wipe out the only species that, as he puts, loves and thinks and creates. And she's even said that, well, just a pinch of that goes very far in the mix, implying that she's incorporated some degree of human DNA into these new dinosaurs, meaning she's not just going to create dinosaurs as they were before. She's going to bring them back and give them a potential they never did. Give them a chance to essentially not only reclaim the earth, as it were, but put the potential that she felt humanity had that was wasted in humanity and put it into them so they can hopefully do with it what we apparently never could. And the way she talks about what she's doing, the way she explains her reasons for doing it, and how her method of delivery as a character, you kind of get it. I'm not saying you want to go along with it, but you kind of get where she's coming from. And from her perspective, you're like, personally, you want to go against her because, you don't want to die yourself. But if you remove yourself from the equation and you approach it just with logic, you can't really argue with her because everything she's saying is right. And her decision to use dinosaurs is not born out of some kind of grandiose or misplaced form of philosophy or ideology. It's just, hey, why not dinosaurs? Why not? If it's not going to be us, why not dinosaurs? I found the way to bring them back, which is unprecedented in and of itself. So you know what? If I'm going to wipe out humanity and give this planet a chance to recoup from it and another species a chance to kind of do what we apparently could not do, why not let it be dinosaurs? Why not? And it's that simplicity in her logic that is just both captivating and terrifying at the same time, because you realize she is the mother of human genocide and she will wipe us all out by creating this virus which essentially forces women to kind of give live birth to dinosaur eggs, I guess, and essentially thereby killing the female. So essentially you have these ultra intelligent dinosaurs that are being born from human women, born from a virus that kills them in the process. So you're literally wiping out our ability to reproduce as we are single-handedly reproducing that which will replace us. And there is something so mad yet brilliant in that idea, that formula. And it is a shame that this film was reduced to just kind of a B movie. Had it been maybe approached by a larger studio, or basically bought out by a larger studio, or at least just given a more reasonable budget and a longer, pre-production phase and shooting time, this film, to this day, while still very much being kind of a cult classic amongst a lot of horror fans, I feel could have been much more. Would it have been elevated to the levels of something like Jurassic Park? Probably not. Especially being a very hard R film. And I figure I should point out, this is a hard R movie. It is very, very violent and extremely gory. So if you have a weak stomach, while I still think you should check out the movie, be prepared to look away. And when you look away fast, because when the blood starts flowing, it happens quick and it happens hard. And it's very realistic in the way that people are dying, in the sense that when, it's not when you watch films like the Evil Dead movies where people are being torn apart. It's played up more for laugh. It's very comedic. So even though it's gory and bloody, it's over the top and it's hilarious in a weird way. Maybe I just learned something terrible about myself. I don't know. But in this film, when people are being literally torn to pieces, the actors are giving great performances, and it looks very real. It looks like these people are being torn apart, and it looks like they are reacting the way someone would if they're getting their stomach ripped open and their guts strewn about. And because of that, it's kind of disturbing. And as a kid, I grew up watching a lot of these kinds of movies, and I always enjoyed it. But I remember even when I first saw Carnosaur, I was like, oh, wow. So that's what that would actually look like. It's not a horror movie death. This is what it would look like if this really happened. And I think the only thing that kind of, took me out of the movie a little bit is that these people who were reacting very realistically, being torn apart, were being torn apart by basically, something that looked like Kermit the Frog, just had more teeth and claws, basically. That's really the only thing that takes you out of the scene, is that the thing killing them looks absolutely ridiculous because it's so poorly made, because the creative team behind creating the dinosaurs has so little time and money to put these things together that this is literally the best they can do. In fact, a lot of the times when you see the Deinonychus in the film, which is the primary antagonist, it literally is a puppet. There's a great shot that I'll put up on screen right now, where you see the creature effects artist, literally holding the puppet in his hand, and the Tyrannosaur was basically a combination of a full-size Tyrannosaur, which had very limited mobility, and a miniature that they used predominantly for the film, which looked absolutely terrible. It was all right when it stood still. When the second it moved, it literally just looked like what it was. And again, those are the moments that unfortunately take you out of this movie, are the dinosaurs themselves. But when they're not on screen, the aura that is built around them is very kind of mystifying and terrifying. So it's almost like if you just kind of close your eyes when the dinosaurs come on screen, the film is actually works a lot better. I know that sounds like a terrible thing to say because it's a dinosaur movie, but again, unfortunately, it is the dinosaurs in the movie that kind of hinder the movie through no fault of their own. But yeah, so Carnosaur, again, it's a recommendation that I'm doing with the kind of the warning label of, like, I understand that this film is not a great movie, but it is the underlying theme of this movie, of that humanity is essentially its own extinction level event. We talk about meteorites falling from the sky, natural disasters wiping us out, and in actuality, it would realistically probably be us. We've conquered the world, so to speak. So we are essentially going to be that which destroys ourselves. And because it is this virus, this disease that is producing that which will replace it, it's almost like we are now the vessels of our own extinction. It is kind of a metaphor made literal. We are basically physically now creating with our own bodies that which will replace us. So it's kind of like you training, you're at a job, and you're essentially going to be fired from your job because you're going to be replaced by somebody else. Except before you're let go, you have to train the person that's going to replace you. And that's kind of almost the weird metaphor here, is that we are literally the architects of our own destruction. And in this case, literally creating that which will kill and replace us. And it is perhaps a cautionary tale of, we need to take a long, hard look at ourselves, because for all our brilliance and all our ingenuity, what are we actually using it for? We're using it to destroy ourselves, essentially. We're essentially cavemen with just really high-tech clubs that we're still doing what we've been doing, since, the inception of the human species. So really, when you look at it that way, is she wrong? Is her logic wrong? We want to say yes. That's kind of our reflex, because we don't want to die. But if you're looking at it just from logic, is she wrong? And that's what kind of makes her a very interesting and scary character, because you have a hard time saying no. Despite what you might think, you might want to say no, but if you really look at it in the abstract, it might not be so easy. And she is really what I feel saves this movie, because when she's on screen, she steals the show every time. And again, the film is shot pretty well. There's great cinematography, and I like the dark, low lit, and it has a great eerie feel. Again, so I'd actually be very curious to see if someone would pull like a George Lucas with this movie and edit out all the really cheap looking puppet dinosaurs and put in either really nice CG ones, or use really nice practical effect dinosaurs and drop them into the scenes and kind of copy paste over the bad ones. Because I actually feel like if this movie had better looking dinosaurs, it would still be something that we talk about to this day. And again, unfortunately, that is what hinders it. The dinosaurs themselves do not stand the test of time. But the story, the allegory, and a good number of the performances very much hold up. There are 2 sequels to this movie. The second one I find entertaining, but that's only because it's a blatant ripoff of Aliens. And the third one, it's not for me. But again, I feel this initial film, the intent initially by the creative team behind it, minus the producer, was to make a legitimate, solid film with a good story and good performances and good, interesting characters. Again, it is a very dark and bleak film too, so don't expect a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings. But you can definitely see that the intention for this film was not to necessarily be B-movie schlock. while that may be ultimately what it became, that was not the intention, unlike the sequels, which I feel that's kind of more where they were going for. But for this film, there was a good-hearted intention there, and because of that, there are some really good moments in this movie, worthy of your viewing, your consideration. Again, like I said, I'm not expecting you guys to walk away from this film being blown away. If you are, you maybe saw something clearly I didn't see. But again, I think if you look deep enough, not really even too deep, you'll see what the goal for this film was. And if you're a fan of the book and you like the book and you maybe think the book is better than this movie, what I've always just said, take this movie as a movie and take the book as a book, which they just happen to have the same names. I feel this Carnosaur as a franchise works better as a film. In terms of the book, I feel Crichton's version of genetically engineered dinosaurs was done better a few years later in his book. Even though he wasn't the first to do it, I feel he perfected the formula, so to speak. So that's going to do it for me, guys. Carnosaur. Have you seen it? If so, what did you think? And if you're a fan of the book, if you read the book, I read the book too, feel free to give me some of your thoughts. And if you like the book better, that's fine too. Again, I enjoyed the book. For me, it was really just more of the end. It kind of feels at a certain point, he just stopped writing a story, and a lot of how the book ended kind of ended off the page with him just kind of recollecting it, describing things that I would have much rather have seen happening in real time on the page as opposed to just in retrospect. But the book is fine too, and it's an interesting enough story, and it is different enough from the movie where I don't even consider them the same thing. Different location, different characters, different plot. It's a completely different story that just happens to have the same name, and that's really it. So give me some of your thoughts. Let me know. The film is currently out of print. You can still get the DVDs. They might be a little bit pricey because, again, they're out of circulation. I will put links for them if I can find them. I've heard that Shout Factory has bought out a lot of Roger Corman's film library, so there's a good chance we might be getting a re-release of it soon. I will put what I can find for the film for sale in the description section below. If I cannot find it, I'll just put TBA, and the second they become available again, I'll go ahead and update the link, so depending on when you're watching this, it may be available again. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace!